The rain came down in sharp, relentless sheets, turning the dark highway into a blurred ribbon of red and white lights. Sirens cut through the storm as an ambulance fought its way through traffic, tires hissing against soaked asphalt. Inside the vehicle, under the harsh glow of emergency lights, a man lay completely still on the stretcher. His skin had gone pale, almost gray, and the monitor beside him emitted a single, long, haunting tone. The senior medic looked at the screen for several seconds, his face hardened by years of seeing the worst moments of human life. Finally, he exhaled slowly and shook his head. The words came out heavy and final. "He's gone." For a brief moment, the cramped ambulance seemed to freeze in time. But in the corner of that moving vehicle stood someone who had never faced a moment like this before. A rookie paramedic. And something inside him refused to accept what everyone else believed. Before we continue, take a moment to support the channel. If you believe in kindness, second chances, and the incredible strength of the human spirit, please like this video, share it with someone who needs a little hope today, leave a comment, and subscribe to the channel. Your support helps stories like this reach more hearts around the world. The rookie paramedic, Daniel Carter, was only 24 years old and had been on the job for less than 3 months. His uniform still looked newer than the others, his boots not yet worn by years of long shifts. But his eyes carried a quiet determination that few people noticed. Tonight had started like any other shift. Rainy weather always meant more accidents, more chaos, more desperate calls. But nothing prepared Daniel for what they had found on the roadside just 15 minutes earlier. A black SUV had slammed into the highway barrier, the front completely crushed like paper. Emergency lights from police cars and fire trucks painted the rain in flashing colors as rescuers worked quickly to pull the driver out. The man inside was badly injured. He was in his late 40s, broad-shouldered, wearing a torn military-style jacket. Blood had soaked through the fabric. His pulse had been faint when they first loaded him into the ambulance, but at least there had been a pulse. Now, according to the senior medic, there wasn't. The senior medic, Richard Hayes, had worked emergency response for nearly 25 years. He had seen more life slip away than he could count. Experience had taught him when a fight was over. The monitor was flat. No pulse. No breathing. Rain hammered against the ambulance roof as the vehicle sped toward the hospital, but inside, silence filled the air. Daniel stared at the man on the stretcher. Something about the situation felt wrong. The senior medic had already started preparing the paperwork they filled out when a patient died during transport. His movements were efficient, practiced, almost mechanical. But Daniel's heart was pounding. During training, instructors often said something that stuck with him. Machines don't decide life. People do. Daniel leaned closer to the patient. The man's chest was still. But Daniel noticed something small. The faintest tremor in the man's jaw. It could have been the ambulance shaking. Or it could have been something else. Daniel swallowed hard. He remembered a lesson from a specialized training session he had almost skipped months ago. A visiting instructor, an old military medic, had taught them a rare resuscitation technique sometimes used in extreme battlefield situations when traditional CPR failed. Most of the class had treated it like trivia. But Daniel remembered every step. His voice was careful but urgent as he spoke. "Sir. I think we should try again." The senior medic didn't even look up. "We already did. He's gone." Daniel's mind raced. The technique was unconventional. Some medics believed it worked. Others said it was pointless. But one thing was certain. Doing nothing meant the man would stay dead. Daniel's hands trembled slightly as he moved closer to the stretcher. "Just 30 seconds, he said quietly. The senior medic finally looked at him. For a moment, irritation flashed in his eyes. But then he saw something else in the rookie's face. Conviction. The kind that refuses to surrender. The ambulance hit a bump, jolting everyone inside. Richard sighed heavily. 30 seconds, he muttered. Daniel didn't waste a moment. He repositioned the patient's head, adjusting the airway. Instead of traditional chest compressions, he applied a pressure technique the military medic had demonstrated, a precise combination of sternum compression and abdominal thrust designed to force circulation in cases of severe trauma where the heart had stopped responding. The method looked strange. Even desperate. The senior medic watched silently, arms folded. Rain battered the windows harder as if the storm itself were waiting. 10 seconds passed. Nothing. 15 seconds. Still nothing. 20 seconds. Daniel's muscles strained as he repeated the sequence again. His mind screamed at him to stop, to accept reality. But he kept going. 25 seconds. And then it happened. A small, almost invisible movement beneath the man's ribcage. The heart monitor flickered. Once. Then again. The flat line broke into a weak, fragile rhythm. Beep. 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 The sound seemed impossibly loud inside the ambulance. The senior medic froze. For the first time in years, Richard Hayes looked completely stunned. Daniel stared at the monitor, hardly breathing himself. The man on the stretcher coughed suddenly, a rough, painful gasp dragging air back into his lungs. Color slowly returned to his face. The ambulance driver shouted from the front when he heard the monitor change. "Did we get him back?" Richard stepped forward quickly, checking the patient's pulse. It was weak. But it was there. Alive. The senior medic slowly looked at Daniel, disbelief written across his face. In 25 years of emergency medicine, Richard had pronounced hundreds of patients dead. But never had one come back like this. The ambulance sped through the hospital entrance minutes later, tires splashing through puddles as the doors burst open. Doctors and nurses rushed forward as the stretcher rolled into the emergency room. Daniel stepped back, his hands shaking now that the adrenaline was fading. Medical staff took over immediately, surrounding the patient with controlled urgency. Richard stood beside Daniel, silent for several seconds. Finally, he spoke. Not with authority. But with quiet respect. "You just did something most people would have given up on." Daniel didn't know how to respond. He simply stared at the hospital doors as they closed behind the stretcher. Hours passed. The storm outside finally faded, leaving the early morning sky calm and pale. Daniel sat in the waiting area, replaying every moment in his mind. Had he made the right call? Had it been luck? Or something else? Then the emergency room doors opened again. A doctor walked toward them. His expression held something Daniel had not expected. A smile. The doctor explained that the patient had suffered severe trauma and cardiac arrest from internal bleeding. Most patients in that condition never regain circulation during transport. But somehow, the brief restoration of blood flow Daniel created had kept the brain alive just long enough for surgeons to intervene. The man was now in surgery. And he had a real chance to survive. Richard leaned back in his chair, shaking his head slowly. 30 seconds, he murmured. Daniel finally allowed himself to breathe. Sometimes hope lived in the smallest moments. The moments most people would walk away from. But the story didn't end there. 2 weeks later, Daniel returned to the hospital during a quiet afternoon. He wasn't sure why. Maybe curiosity. Maybe something deeper. A nurse recognized him immediately and smiled. "You're the paramedic who brought him in." Daniel nodded nervously. The nurse pointed toward a recovery room. Inside, sitting up in the hospital bed, was the man from the crash. Alive. Bandaged, pale, but very much alive. When the man saw Daniel standing in the doorway, something powerful happened. Tears filled his eyes. Daniel later learned that the man's name was Michael Lawson, a retired military officer who had spent years teaching battlefield survival techniques to medics overseas. The very technique Daniel used had originated from military field medicine decades earlier. In a strange twist of fate, the life-saving method Michael had once taught soldiers had now been used to save him. The circle had come back around. Before we reach the end of this story, there's something special I'd love to ask you. Please take a moment and comment the word hope below if you believe that even in the darkest moments, life can surprise us with miracles. The room was quiet as Michael looked at Daniel with deep gratitude. Daniel didn't feel like a hero. He simply felt thankful that he had listened to the small voice inside him that said, "Try one more time." And sometimes, that small voice is the difference between goodbye and another chance at life. If this story touched your heart even a little, please take a moment to like the video, share it with someone who believes in second chances, leave your thoughts in the comments, and subscribe to the channel. Your support allows these powerful true-style stories to continue reaching people who need hope today. Because sometimes 30 seconds of courage can change an entire lifetime.